Welcome back to the Honest Art Podcast, everyone. I'm Jody King, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce you to my guest today. So, for a little background, I taught a workshop in May of 2024, so this year, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I met today's guest there, Caleigh Parsons. And, you know, there's just some times you meet people and you just feel like, surely we've known each other forever, or you just click with certain people. And Caleigh Parsons is one of those artists. And I'm going to tell you all about her in just a second. But for now, welcome, Caleigh.
Thank you, Jody. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so excited to literally see each other again. This is the first time we've seen each other since May, so this is exciting for both of us.
It's been too long. It's been too long.
It's been way too long. But so here's one of the reasons that I wanted to introduce you guys to Caleigh. So Caleigh is not only a great artist. I mean, I'm going to put all of her contact information, her Instagram, all of her things here in the show notes. But Caleigh is not just a great artist, but she didn't start until she was in her mid 40s, right?
Correct.
So it was just, I'll let you tell the story in a minute, but it was just like not that long ago. And you are doing really cool, interesting, amazing things while being a mom, a wife, and a mother, and doing this business and kind of starting, quote, later, but making moves. And I think that's really important because we were talking right before we got started, and I said, you know, sometimes we hear from artists who are so well established. Like for me, I've been doing this over 21 years, like all that. And I think it's important to hear from artists who are kind of in the middle of it and just really going for it. And that is you, Caleigh.
Yeah, thank you. It is. I'm in the middle of it, and I'm going for it.
Yeah. So tell us about that. How did all this start for you?
So I'm a creative. I've been a creative, since the womb, I'm assuming. And I have been surrounded by artists throughout my life. Always wanted to be an artist. And though I was surrounded by art, I was always surrounded by the product. I was never really put into an environment where I could learn the process of being an artist. Yeah. But I've always been very, very, very drawn to original art. So I started collecting it. So, I mean, I had my grandmother's paintings hanging in my home, aunts and all my mother's an artist. So again, I always saw it, the finished product, but I never had lessons. I was never immersed in the actual process of creating art. But in my early 20s, when I started getting a paycheck, I started buying original art. And at that time, it was obviously, from local artists where I was living. If I would ever travel anywhere, I would buy a piece of art to bring home to remember that experience. And so for 20 years, I collected original art. But through all of that, I would try to paint and I would give up very, very quickly. I would be so deflated every time I would get my art supplies out and give it a try.
That damn creative process gets you every time.
It
right?
really does. It really, it did. It certainly did. And then during the pandemic, when I was, when we were quarantined and I had at that time, 11 or 12-year-old twin boys at home, we would get out the supplies and try to create. But I just could not get past this point. I really didn't know what I was doing. So I decided in 2021, in order to fill this creative void that I have felt for so long, I thought, you know what, I've been collecting art from local and regional artists for so long. Why don't I just kind of create this online platform, this online art gallery where I can grab these artists that I've worked with and collected from and supported and put them all on a website and try to sell their art. Very quickly, that became a brick and mortar studio for some local artists here where I live to sort of have a collective
Yeah.
creative space. And finally, I got immersed into it. And I was able to watch these other women who some were early in their artistic journey, some have been painting for 20 years. And I saw them and I finally, it clicked. It finally clicked what that process looks like for me. But it took me, it was about a year into it before I finally would put, put it to use.
Okay, so when you're saying it finally clicked about for me, so what do you feel like was the thing that clicked?
I was operating under this delusion, whatever word you want to say, that an artist knows what they want to paint. They put the canvas in front of them. They paint it in one fell swoop, in one setting or sitting, and they move on to the next one. And they know what they want to paint. It ends up being the masterpiece they want it to be, and then they move on. And what clicked with me was watching these women who would have 4, 5, 6 pieces going at a time. Some they'd been working on for 3 months. Some were just where they were putting marks on the canvas just to explore or, play. And what clicked for me was, oh, this is a process. This is not a product. It's a process and it's a journey. And that was the game changer for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think I am enthralled by these videos that you see on social media, process videos where the painter starts and finishes and like it just all goes smoothly. I'm like, that's not real.
I really think it does a disservice. I do think I love watching them, but there's so much more going on in there that those videos, I just think it's not true. It's not really how the process goes.
Yeah.
There are probably tears and
Right?
gnashing of teeth and lying on the ground.
For sure. Well, you learning that the creative process is part of the journey. It's part of making art. That is so big because that's usually where most people stop. They go, especially if they don't have, if they didn't go to art school and weren't quote classically trained, right? They'll get to that like shit stage and they'll just decide they're not an artist. So
I did it for 20 something years. I would just get to the shit stage and say, well, there we go. Once again, I'm not an artist. I'm a wannabe.
And so did this happen gradually where you just started getting back into your art and you started working through the phases, or did you have a piece that it just turned out like, oh, look at that. Look what happens if I just stick with it. It just became an evolution?
I would say it became an evolution. I was playing, one of the artists in our studio was painting with oil paints, and she would just let me kind of dip my brush into hers and play. And that painting sat in our studio for a year. It was absolutely horrific. And I pulled it out one day with another artist to get a good giggle. Like this was a joke, like, look at this. This is why I can't be an artist. And the other artist I was showing it to handed me a palette knife and she said, stop this right now. She did she kind of guided me through putting some things on that canvas on top of that horrific painting. And when I finished it, the original artist who started me on it bought it.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was kind of the game changer. And so I just started playing with those tools, palette knives and various different types of paints, and just kind of it was like a bug. It's like I caught a bug and I couldn't stop.
Yeah. That's how it works for us, right? Once we realize, oh, wait, and then to sell a piece, like people ask me this all the time, what's your favorite part of being an artist? And I know what I'm supposed to say. Like I'm supposed to say, Oh, just the inspiration and being behind the canvas is its own reward. That's a bunch of bullshit. No, my favorite thing is selling that sucker and getting that
Amen, sis.
external, I know, so I'm supposed to have internal validation. Yeah, I have that. That's fine. But give me some external validation.
Well, no, I mean, I've said this before. There is nothing that feels better than someone who wants to spend their money that
Yeah.
they earn on something that you created out of
Yes.
your head and out of your heart. That feeling it's euphoric, honestly. I mean,
It's totally,
I created this by myself and you want to spend your money on it.
yeah. Like I created this out of thin air. Like there was nothing on the planet
That's right.
like it until I
That's,
created it. And you want to give me money for it?
that's right. It's,
Like that's orgasmic. It's
it
the
is.
absolute best thing ever.
It is. I agree.
Oh,
Yeah.
so fun.
And I was like, when she bought it, I will say, I mean, I thought, oh, I like this feeling. I think I could do more of this. This feels nice. Yeah.
Well, speaking of doing more of it, I love your story for a million reasons. Number one, you're doing this at a time of your life where most people are saying, I can't yet. I'll do this when my kids graduate, or I'll do like there's always a reason that we
Yeah.
put it off.
Hmm.
What is this like for you right now to balance everything, and how do you do it? Like if you were speaking to an artist who has kids at home, but has this passion, wants to create their art, wants to sell their art, do you have any words of wisdom?
I will say, and it's a great question. There's, I do have I live with a lot of regret, and I know I'm not supposed to, but it's hard not to wish that I had started this a long time ago,
Sure.
but I didn't.
Sure.
And I do believe timing is everything. And I believe this was when I was meant to start for a number of reasons. But I would not have started had I not surrounded myself with a community of artists. I know it. I started that online gallery, and the studio that came from that, the brick and mortar, where I was surrounded by these artists. That is what catapulted
Yes.
me. And I would not have done it without these women who were pushing me, encouraging me, supporting me, teaching me.
Yeah.
I'd never been in that environment. So a lot of people around here ask me what they can do to sort of get involved. And I will tell you that I think it is critical for artists to support artists. And I think that one of the things that was beneficial for me in not starting until I was 45 is that for 20 years, I was buying art, supporting artists, showing up to art festivals. You know, I kind of created a network for myself,
Yeah.
not even intentionally doing it so that I could one day benefit from it.
Yeah.
That was a passion of mine. And so I created this sort of network for 20 years. And I will tell you, I literally opened my hands and said, I'm ready. In 2021, when I started down this road, I opened my hands and I said, I am ready. I had no idea what that was going to look like.
Right.
But when I tell you that it was like a zoom,
Yep.
like a download.
I always say it's like when you make the decision and you invest your time, you invest your money, you invest your energy, whatever it's all currency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like throwing a stake in the ground, and the universe is like, let's fucking go.
Yep. That's exactly.
She
It's go
did
time.
it. It's like they all like look at each other. She did it. Come here. She did it. She finally did it.
Finally,
She did it. And it's like
That's right.
truly, like Paul Coelho says, the universe rises to meet you. And it's still a ton of work. It's totally a ton of work, for sure.
For sure.
But there is something about, and there's certainly something about the community piece, Caleigh. I mean, you absolutely nail it. I did a bunch of research in the last couple of months about like there's all different types of artists out there. What is surely there's a common denominator, all the way from, Rembrandt, Picasso, like Michelangelo, like Basquiat, current artists, like whatever. Like, what's the common denominator? And it was community. That was the common denominator. That's why I started Rebel Artist Society. You guys will put the link in the show notes, but the community is so, so important. So
Agree. And look, I'm kind of a loner. I'm really an
we kind of
introvert,
all
even though,
are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love to paint alone. But if you look at the community as something that you're able to, there's an energy that you can give to it, you're going to get it back. I mean, it's not, I think if
It's
you just,
exactly.
you immerse yourself in it and support other people, there will be that reciprocation of
Yeah,
energy and support.
for
And you
sure.
just have to be very, very willing to, and this is honestly, this is probably my biggest piece of advice about any artist who's starting in any way. Just let yourself be vulnerable and don't try to act like you know everything. I think that when you are honest about what you don't know and you're honest about where you are in your journey, it's disarming, and it allows other people to want to collaborate with you versus compete with you.
Yes.
And
So
I
true.
just think being very vulnerable and honest and open about where you are, about what you know, what you don't know,
Yeah.
I think that that's helpful if you're really wanting to truly a create honest art,
Yeah.
and b make some kind of living out of it, whether you want to be do it full time or you want it to be a side hustle, or just your a passion project where you're just making
Right.
fun money or whatever that is.
Right.
I think
Right.
being vulnerable is key.
And I think that's key in life, right? Just
Yeah.
in general, I just hosted the women from Studio Elite here this past weekend, and that's one of the things that they talked about. They're like, "You're just so real," and I'm like, "God, I don't have time. I don't have time to be anything else anymore." I
Right.
mean, that's kind of the beauty of aging through this creative process as well. I want to mention one other thing, and that I don't know if you've heard this, Caleigh, but so many artists say to me, how do I have all these artists following me on Instagram. How do I get collectors to follow me? Why, it's just all these artists. And when you were talking, and I say this all the time, I go, who do you think appreciates art
Yeah.
more than
An
artists?
artist.
And it's not like we don't have any money. That's just some starving artist bullshit.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so has that been your
Totally agree.
experience as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, it's funny too. If you participate in art shows or art festivals, it's so funny because we're all just like buying each other's art.
Yeah, it's
um,
amazing.
it's really fun. Um, so yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that artists are also collectors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Imagine that. Imagine that.
imagine
Okay,
that.
so tell us about your art, because your art. One of the things I love about your art, Caleigh, is it's so vibrant, and like, so sometimes you can see a lot of really really vibrant art, but it lacks a level of sophistication to it. Yours is vibrant. It's alive. It's energetic, and it's sophisticated.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for that, because that's something I do worry about with my style, and I want it to definitely feel like fine art,
It
and I want
does.
there to be a sophistication to it, but I also want it to be playful and exciting. Um, so your question is, what's the process?
Well, I'm just wondering, because like the work that I saw you doing just in May, and we, at the time of our recording, this is October. So I feel like just from May to October, your style has evolved. And so my question really is about, tell us, like, I think that you are so indicative of so many artists who are willing to just go for it, like not willing to stay in like what you said, I want to paint this thing, and so I'm going to paint that thing.
Right.
You seems like you're following the next thing that feels good for you, and it's
Absolutely.
evolving. So I really want to know, tell us about that evolution of your art and where you are, how you do that.
Um, well, I could tell you a lot of things. I think that the thing that is probably the most important for me is that I view this process as a conversation, and I 100% of the time have to start the conversation.
Yeah.
This relationship that I have with my painting, I have to start the conversation. And so I I I would say 99% of the time when I walk up to the canvas, I have absolutely no plan, and I don't plan out my colors. I know that um
I love that.
you know, I know that goes against a lot of things, but I don't and I can't, because when I do, it's like trying to rehearse a conversation. It's like trying to memorize a speech before you go into a conversation, a true, authentic conversation with a person. You
Right.
can't do that.
No.
It's a very, then it's a surface level conversation and you get nothing out of it. So I try very, no, there's no trying. That's not true. I just don't usually go in with a plan.
Yeah.
And I just walk up to the canvas and I speak to it. I say hi, give it some whatever I feel like doing at the time.
Yeah.
And then and sometimes it becomes a knockdown drag out.
Hmm.
Sometimes the conversation is short and sweet. Sometimes it lasts for weeks or months. But I have to put things onto the canvas that causes me to respond. And I've taken a lot of advice from you about flipping and, twirling and
Yeah.
walking away, coming back, I've taken a lot of advice, from
For those of you
artists
who
like
don't
you.
know what she's talking about, she's not talking about me personally. I don't flip. I don't twirl.
Well,
Well, I might
I mean,
twirl.
no comment.
I do. I do know you mean the canvas.
Yeah, the flipping of the canvas, swirling
I
of the canvas.
flip. I twirl. That's how I get all these beautiful,
Yeah,
colors and things on the
yeah,
canvas.
absolutely. And shapes and movement and energy. Um, so yeah, and I just, a lot of the time, I also, when it comes to color, I respond to what's on the canvas too.
Yeah.
I mix a lot of my colors on the canvas.
Yeah. A lot of artists do that. That's just the way they do it. I'm like, you do you. I think that's
Yeah, and I
amazing.
know that I've tried to do it a different way.
Right.
Um, and it doesn't, I mean,
Well,
I do mix on a palette too. I mean, I don't
yeah. No, I've
always do it
seen
that
you.
way, but
Basically you do it in a way that I teach it. You just don't do it on the palette. You do it on the canvas, which is
yeah,
it's kind of same, different
yeah,
substrates.
yeah,
But you do make your colors cohesive, and that's the most important, part when we are talking about color. You definitely do that. The other
thanks.
thing I think that you have a lot to offer in terms of your experience is that you live in a little town in Alabama, right?
Right,
And when I work with artists, they could feel like they're in a big city, or they can feel like they're in a small town, in another country, and they don't know how to get their art out there, and they just feel like that's the biggest obstacle they have. But you're doing it. So tell us before we started, you started talking about you had an intention at the beginning of this year. So tell us about that intention and then what you've been doing to make that happen. I'm going to let my
okay,
cat in here. My
okay.
cat is trying to. There we
Oh,
go.
hi. Oh, how beautiful. Um, so yeah, I did, and my intention for 2024 was to get my art in front of as many audiences as possible outside of my region. And let me say this, the people in my community have shown up and shown out and been so supportive. I can't even tell you.
That's
I am,
awesome.
and they continue to be. But I also know that my style, and the more honest I become with my style, and the more honest I become with the work I'm putting out, I know that I probably need to diversify my collector
Yeah.
portfolio. So I did make it, I set an intention to get my work in other markets. And I will say that I do think, going back to what we talked about earlier, you know, and this won't be relatable to everybody, but for me, the fact that I did collect art for 20 years
Mm-hmm.
was very helpful for me when I started creating my own art because of that synergy, or that,
Yep.
reciprocal support that I received because I've been doing that for so long. So that helps, and I have a lot of connections. So because of that network, I have a ton of connections um, throughout sort of the Southeast that I plugged into. But something that I found was that when I started applying to festivals, and I wasn't getting in those because I didn't have a good booth shot. And you really can't get a
Oh,
good booth shot until you are in you get accepted into a festival. I mean, yeah, you can put your tent up in your driveway and try to set it up and get a booth shot, but uh, you
it's
know,
not the same.
it's
It's
not
not
the
the same.
same.
And it's just like, when kids graduate from college and they're like, everybody wants people with experience, but how am I going to get experience if you don't give me the
Exactly.
job, right? It's like, how
Exactly.
am I supposed to get a good booth shot if you're not going to let me in these festivals, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
what did you
So
do?
so what I did was I decided to just start applying to things where you don't have to have a booth shot,
Nice.
and you just apply with your photos of your art. And all it takes is getting in one
Yeah.
and show up to it. Even if it's one of those where you don't have to be there, you just
Yeah.
deliver your art and they hang it. Show up, be there.
Yeah.
Meet the other artists, meet the collectors, meet the people who are shopping. Even if you don't sell one single piece of art, that connection that you'll make will go so far. Um, and so just showing up to the first one led me to the second one, led me to the third one, because I was meeting people and they say, "Oh, have you applied to so and so in Atlanta?" "No, I didn't know about that one." "Well, here it is." It's just showing up and also being willing to be rejected.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's really hard, but you have to be open to that and understand that art is like music. It's like any other creative thing. Not everyone's going to respond to it. Not everyone's
Right.
going to like it. But I also would say that when you show up, when you get in and you're able to get somewhere and show up and start meeting other artists, again, be vulnerable, ask questions, don't act like you know everything.
That
How are you going to
beginner's
learn if you
mindset,
don't
exactly.
ask?
That beginner's mindset is, I tell myself that when I go into situations. I was like, yeah, you've been doing this 21 years. You still don't know everything. Don't act like you do. Go in with the beginner's mindset, right? That it draws people to you because they
Right,
understand vulnerability. They
right,
understand what it's like. Everybody's just pretending anyway. So
right. I mean, truly. And it's so funny, Jody, because um, a lot of the artists who I've met at these shows that I've done this year, I assumed that they were just blowing and going. They'd been doing it forever. They were,
yeah,
and then I'll notice that they're in another show that's, an emerging artist show just like me. And
yeah, it's
it,
awesome.
that's just, it's awesome. It's validating.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to watch what happens when you kind of create this little universe for yourself of people doing what you're doing, the
For
same thing you're
sure.
trying to do.
For sure. So you started, in order to get your work outside of your little region, right? You started applying to exhibitions where you didn't have to have a photo, and then I'm sure you took photos of your booth so that you had that moving forward, right?
Right, right. But typically, the types of shows that I think have um, I've kind of found my niche when
Yeah.
it comes to the types of shows I do. Typically, they don't even ask for they don't even ask for that. They just want you to submit photos of your work. And
Yeah.
sometimes they will want a bio. Sometimes they will want a photo of you and your bio. Sometimes not. Um, but if you get in, like I said, if there's any way you can show up, even just to the opening night reception or just one of the days of the show. Some of them, require you to be there the whole time, and some don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, like I always say, people want to buy the artist as well as the art. And if you
right,
can make a personal connection with the collector versus, them walking into some booth and the artist doesn't care to show
right.
up, it's giving, when you don't show up, it's giving, I don't care. I don't care
Yeah,
if my art sells, right? And so
right.
just the fact that you show up, connecting with that collector, it makes them feel important too.
Absolutely. And I agree completely. And I will say too, one more way, one more thought about people who are trying to get their work out there. I don't know all the things. I don't know all the ways to do it, but I would again encourage people to, if you have a connection at all with
Yeah.
someone in a town where you would love to introduce yourself to a gallery owner, use the connection.
Yeah.
Just ask for an introduction or
Yeah.
send an email. I mean, it's simple, and you just have to be prepared and be okay with either a no or a no response, but there, you can't know unless you try. So you have to be very comfortable with,
Yeah. And
knowing it may not go anywhere.
right, right. And you're reiterating not only what I've coached artists on, but also I interviewed Nina Baronato, who is an amazing jewelry designer who's had her jewelry on, Alicia Keys and Beyonce and Lizzo, and like the list goes on and on. And
Yeah.
I said, how did you do that? She says, her personally, she says, I've been emailing these people for like a decade.
Right.
And I'm like, okay,
Right.
well, most artists are afraid to do that, to put themselves out there. And she's like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't
Right.
take. She's
Right.
like, choose your hard, right?
Yeah.
That's what I always say. Choose your hard.
Choose your hard.
Are you going
Yeah.
to choose the hard of going, why am I not selling any art? Why does nobody want my art? Or are you going to choose the hard of, hey, I'm going to put myself out there and give it a shot. And if the answer is no, it's, the answer is still no. So
That's right.
you didn't lose anything.
That's absolutely right. And that can also be said for even just putting your art out there, on social media or on a website.
Yes,
We
exactly.
are so conditioned to want this feedback, these likes and these comments and all these things. And unless you can be okay with not getting the kind of feedback you want,
That's right.
uh,
There's never been anyone with any degree of success that has not been rejected,
right,
right? Anybody. I listened to Sarah Blakely's story, who started Spanx, right? She was rejected over and over and over again. I
right,
mean, it just happens all the time. So the people who are most successful, you put yourself out there and you risk being told no. Risk being told, like for me, I was told by several gallery owners that my art was nothing special. And I mean,
oh,
I know, so rude, but they were right, actually. They were
at the
absolutely
time.
right at the time. And they were just, honestly, it was a gift that they were,
Yeah.
so honest about
Well, it's
it.
like a performance review. I mean, there's no job that you don't have to take constructive criticism or have a performance review or be told,
Exactly.
you know,
A
it's
hundred
how we get
percent.
better.
100%. So, you have been in galleries, you have been in exhibitions, you have done a lot of things to get yourself out there and more visible than just, your small town. Do you have any tips?
So I do think that if you're a beginner, when you are applying to shows, a lot of times they want to see your bio, or your CV, and I didn't have one of those.
Yeah.
And I've heard you talk about this a lot on your podcast, but I really, really believe it, and I've done it myself. You have to create your own experiences, your own opportunities.
Opportunities. Yes.
So for the first 3 years of my doing this, I was having my own shows. I was partnering up with other artists and having little sip and shops, or we even did, some art classes together where I would host it and the artist, who had a lot more experience than me would teach it. But I was just putting myself out there in my community as much as possible so that I could have some things
Yeah.
on my bio. So I do, recommend, just even if you're just having it in your home. I mean,
Right.
have a viewing in your home. I mean, get creative. People, if you just give them a little bit of wine and some cheese, they'll show up. They will show up.
So what I've heard you saying is networking, number one, is really big, right? So building a community and networking within that community for
Yes.
sure, right?
Yes.
Don't wait for the opportunities to come to you. Go out and create those opportunities,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
Number three is just send the email, make
Yeah.
the phone call, be ready to be rejected and not let it, just be ready for that process, right?
Right.
So
Right.
all of those are so good, especially for people that are saying, I live in too small a town, it's too remote. Also, I get this one, Kelly. No one in my community will get abstract art. You don't understand. My small town will not get abstract art. So,
I know.
but to me, this is exactly why you diversify, right? You could start
Right.
however, and then you just diversify, and the right people are going to come to you.
Yeah.
But was that your experience?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I do think that as an artist, you kind of have to take on the responsibility of educating other people about your work and about art in general. If people don't get abstract art, it's probably because they've not really been exposed to it a whole lot. And
Yeah.
I try to tell people this art isn't for you to get, it's for you to experience. So you may have a negative response to it, and that's okay. You may have a positive response to it. That's okay too. It is just about experiencing it. Quit trying to figure it out. Quit trying to find shapes in it or a meaning behind it. And sometimes if that's what you like to do and you enjoy trying to do that when you're looking at art, great. But take the pressure off of yourself. If you don't get abstract art, cool. You're not really supposed to.
I love that.
Either you like looking at it and it gives you a good feeling, or you don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But
So
I do think that
educating.
we have to educate our audience and our community as best we can
For sure.
about what it can bring to their lives.
Yes. And I didn't understand abstract art for the longest time. And I was living in a major metro. I was living in Houston, which is fourth largest
Right.
city in the U.S. And so
Right.
it's not unique to small towns or things. I think in general, people we have to educate them a little bit on what it is that we do, right?
That's right. And it's so interesting because I have multiple people who have collected my art and come back to it, and bought multiple pieces, who never ever thought they were into art. They
Isn't that
didn't think,
great?
so yeah, it's not all hope is lost on people who don't think they get abstract art. They just probably they've never really been given permission to just experience it and be okay with whatever feeling they're feeling when they see it.
Right, right. Okay, so my final question before we let people know a little bit more how that they can find you, and that is, what would you say to somebody who is 45, 48, 50, 55, 60, whatever it might be? What would you say to that woman that says, it's too late for me?
Well, I guess I would probably say that if you're wanting to experiment from a creative standpoint, with painting in particular, but it could be anything really. If it's something you're wanting to create from your own mind, your own heart, your own soul, there is really nothing to be lost by just trying and just giving yourself grace to just, take it one moment at a time. You can just spend just a few moments at the canvas or in front of the paper or whatever it is. Just, there's nothing to be lost. You're not going to come away from it worse off by trying.
Exactly.
yeah, I think just letting yourself just play. I mean, I think that we sometimes think that we're too old to play and experiment and try new things. And
Yeah.
you're not hurting anybody by just attempting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I said this was the last question, but I have one more question because um, the sense of play, it's almost like we don't give ourselves permission to have this creative time
Right.
of play of creating at all. How do you balance that, Caleigh, as with all the things you have going on with your boys still at home, your husband, you're balancing a lot of things, and so how do you balance that? What are some things that you
Well,
do?
I'm very, very, very lucky in that I have a very supportive partner.
Hmm.
And he watched me struggle with this for so long that when I finally found it, he was like, finally, this woman can stop bitching. Um, so, and I do have my boys, when I started this, they were middle school. They're now juniors in high school. They're twins. Um, and they, again, this is very, for me, they're driving. They don't need me as much. And I know that a lot of
Yeah.
people, your audience isn't all going to be in the same life
Right.
season as me. So, um, that's kind of a harder question for me to answer because if I tried to do this when they were smaller, I don't know how that would have looked.
Right.
I do look at a lot. I have a lot of friends who are artists who do not have as much time as I do to create because of the season of life they're in.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you can carve out a little space in your home that is just yours,
Yeah.
and even if you only give it 30 minutes a day, even if it's just
Yeah.
taking a marker to just give yourself just that little bit of time to get that out. I think it will build, but unfortunately, I don't really have the best advice for people who have younger children at home and how to balance all that because
Well,
I,
actually, I think what you just said is really important, which is that this is the time.
yeah,
This is the time
yeah,
because we don't have those young kids. Not. I mean, many people do, but we don't. If we're just coming to this later in life, it's perfect timing, right?
yeah. And you did ask that. You said for someone who's a little bit further along in their
Well,
timeline.
in
You're
their.
right.
I love that our timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. That's right. Right. You've done the hard work. You've raised if you have children, you've done that, and yeah, this is the time to kind of let yourself be free.
I
I don't know.
agree. I don't think there's any better time, honestly. I mean, I've had the privilege of working with thousands of artists, and some of them, oh my gosh, some of them were in their 30s and they were juggling everything. They were
Right.
still making it work, but they did it with some support. I think that
Right.
is really important to know. But giving ourselves grace 100% is important. Also, for me, I have a crazy busy schedule like everyone else. And so I have to carve that time out. Like it
Yeah.
has to be an intentional thing, but it only can be intentional when I, like when I appreciate my own self-worth and believe that I
Oh,
deserve
right.
this time, right?
That's right.
So it's kind of like
That's right.
backwards, like go, oh, you know what? It is my time. I deserve this now.
Yeah.
And then that
Right.
allows me to carve out that in time intentionally. And everybody like, all right, this day, these hours, nobody talk to me.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Don't walk in
Absolutely.
that door and tell me you see a boat in an abstract painting.
Right.
This is a
Right.
comment-free zone. Leave me
Yeah.
alone. It's not
Yeah.
finished anyway,
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, we will sit down and read a book or we'll, pour a glass of wine and go get in the tub. I mean, this is another form of self-love and
100%.
taking time for yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. I have loved talking to you. And I know that other women are going to be inspired by your story as well, especially when they see your art, when they see your social media, when you guys get to meet Caleigh more just as who she is. She's just an incredible human being as well as being an incredible artist. So where can they find you?
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for having me. It has been my honor, truly. So I am on Instagram at Caleigh Parsons Art, CaleighParsons Art. And then also my website is CaleighParsonsArt.com.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, thank you. And again, for those of you, I mentioned it at the beginning, I met Caleigh at a workshop in Santa Fe. This is going to come out in November, and I will have released spots to a workshop in March. I don't know if there will be any seats available by the time this comes out. But Caleigh, should they go to the workshop?
Well, I was going to say, will you let me speak to that just for a moment?
For sure.
If you, the benefits of doing a Jody workshop are too many to really name. But if you can put yourself into a room with this woman right here, do it. Don't hesitate to do it. And not only is Jody going to give you, y'all, you learn stuff, but then she just starts just like giving you all this free advice about things that she lets you ask questions that you can't, you know, it's like you don't know where else you're going to get these answers. And she just lets you kind of free flow all the questions. So just learning from Jody is one thing, but then putting yourself in a room with 6, 7, 8, 12, 15 other artists who are trying to do the same thing that you are is absolutely magical. And I could not recommend it more. You will make connections and friendships that you can't even imagine where those connections will take you.
Yeah. Well,
I know that's a little bit, that's a little bit, you know, sugary, but it's just the truth.
No, and I so appreciate you saying that. And I do agree with you. It's like the workshops. I build my community because like you, I'm like, okay, well, now you're my friend. Good luck getting away from me. Right. But we do that for each other. You built your community of women from that workshop. And it's true. That's just how we continue to build our own community and get more information, more ways to sell art, or more ways just to understand ourselves through the women around us or the artists around us.
Oh my gosh, yes. There's a lot of self-discovery that can happen when you're around other women who are trying to self-discover.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you, ma'am, so much. Thanks for being on the podcast, and I will see you soon.
I know. Yay.
Okay. Take
Thanks,
care.
Jody.
And for everyone else, thanks for being here on the Honest Art Podcast. All of the links to what we talked about and to Caleigh's information will be in the show notes. All right. Take care, everybody. Until next time, see you later. All right, it's that time of year again, and I love a good deal, so I would offer you guys a good deal. So for Black Friday, we are offering the Color Course for Rebels 101 and 102, which used to be $697. Together, they're going to be $197 for Black Friday. Plus, if you want to join my Patreon community and have been wondering, I don't know how to quite do that or where to get in, you could also join my Patreon community for only $20 a month for Black Friday. So go to the link in the show notes and you'll get all of the deets. You got to get on my email list to get all of the deals. All right, see you Black Friday.